We'd like to thank the following sponsors for helping provide this video.
Without further ado, I would like to welcome Linda Rising, who's going to talk to us about cities.
It's wonderful to be here in Boston. I'd have to think a minute, where am I? I'm in Boston. And my husband came with me, so my husband's over there if you want to have any questions for him later. We've had a little time to do some sightseeing today and maybe tomorrow morning before we head back to Nashville. And his sister lives in Boston, so this was a nice excuse to get together with the family over lunch today. So you might have noticed, those of you who don't know me very well, or those of you who do know, and are wondering, oh my God, Linda's still out there. She's still talking, even though she's obviously incredibly old. You weren't noticing that? No. So one of the things you might notice about this presentation is there's no copyright on it. And that's because I consider myself officially retired. Johanna and I were talking about the definition for retirement. So for me, that means you only do what you want to do. So I only talk about things that I really care about. And it just happens to be sometimes interesting to other people. And you're here tonight because you think, I might have some interesting things to say. And at the end, I hope that you will realize that maybe there were several interesting things in the talk, and you're thinking there would be somebody in your organization and you wish they had been here. They weren't because they were working or doing something frivolous and couldn't come to the meeting instead. But that's okay because my slides are really boring. Anybody could talk to these slides. And that includes you. So you just send me some email. I got that on the very first slide. And say, Linda, I wish somebody from my organization had been there to hear about these tips from psychology. Would you send me your slides so I can give them in my team or my organization, and I'll be happy to send you the slides because I don't have time, especially given my age, to get everywhere, so you're going to have to help me out. Will you do that? Okay. And that goes for anything else that might be out there on YouTube. Say, oh, can you also send me that presentation for the Agile Mindset or Fearless Change? And then you can give it. You can change it. You can give that presentation. Okay, so there's the first bit of important information is my email. And you know how you do this. You say, Linda, that talk was awesome. It's probably the best talk I've ever heard in my life. Oh, and by the way, would you send me those slides so I can turn around and give that talk? This is called better problem solving and decision making. And it's for people, well, that's for us, I guess, because don't we do this? It's called thinking. Does that look like thinking to you? Is that how you do it? You sit and you stare at that screen. Well, let's take a little poll here. Now, be honest. What is the longest amount of time in hours that you have sat in front of a screen like that without standing up to, well, you know, go to the bathroom or move around or get a cup of coffee? You just sat there. Now, I'm not counting reaching out for the M&Ms on your desk or reaching for that Monster drink. That doesn't count. I'm talking about standing up and moving away from your desk. What's the longest amount of time in hours that you have done that? Give me a number.
2.
Yes? 2? Oh, you can do better than that. 6?
0.
0. No, I'm looking for a big number. That is ends in larger. larger than 0? How many? 4? 4. Any?
12.
12?
It wasn't a desk, it was a bed.
Should I count that?
It had a laptop on the bed.
Okay, so you were in the bed, you didn't move from the bed, you didn't have any other devices in the bed that would, no, it was just the computer, and you were on that computer for 12 solid hours. Well, okay, that's not the world record. I have been doing this now for several years. The world record now, well, the old world record was 13 hours. And I have that from 2 gentlemen in the same country. What country do you suppose that was?
India.
No, not the U.S.
Japan.
Not Japan.
I would say India.
Not India. No. Both lived in London. 2 13 hours at different times, so in different presentations, 13 hours. And to both of them, I said exactly what I said to you was, you mean you spent 13 hours staring at a computer screen, working away, not getting up to go to the bathroom for 13 hours?
I don't recommend it.
And they both said the same thing, which you might want to say as well. They say, yes, that's true, 13 hours, but. Are you going to tell me that? What are they going to say? But.
I did it for 2 weeks, and I almost couldn't walk after the 2 weeks.
No, that wasn't what I was looking for, but. What they both said was, but I solved the problem. The intimation there is that that's how you do it.
Okay.
That you sit without moving for 12 hours or 13 hours. That's how you do it. That is thinking or problem solving at its best. That's the myth we all subscribe to, because don't we love that? How many people did you tell after that? Oh, I was there for 12 hours in bed. I didn't move. Did you do that?
I think 150 people.
150 people. So we wear that like a badge of honor. Oh, yes, I was here all night working, but I solved that problem. As though there were not a better way. Well, that's the old world record. I have a new one. A young lady in Chicago, 16 hours. And she did not say, but I solved the problem. She said, I did not solve the problem. So not only had she spent 16 hours staring at a screen, but she had to go home in defeat, realizing that she was not successful. Her thinking was not so good. Her husband said she slept for a day and a half. And they all did say exactly what you said. I will never do that again. So maybe there's hope. Maybe we could learn from that, that that's not the best way to solve problems. Well, what about this? That's a meeting. People are still staring at a screen. Have you ever been in one of those situations where somebody pounded on the table and said, we're not leaving. We are not leaving this room until, oh, fill in the blank. We are not leaving this room until some big thing happens, as though that's the best way for that decision or that problem to be solved, or that consensus or that collaboration, or whatever the reason was for the meeting and that big thing, that we're going to sit here. It's really the same, isn't it? In fact, what is it about those two situations? Now that we have kind of looked at them, sitting, staring at the screen, sitting in the meeting, what are some things that are going on there that are the same in both situations? Yes?
You're not moving.
Not moving. And in particular, what are you doing? You're sitting. What are you doing now? And what have you been doing all day? Probably sitting all day. Okay, so sitting, that's one thing. Anything else? No other similarity? Yes?
I was walking, I was shopping, took a person out for coffee,
But what, in
So
those
I
two
was sitting
situations?
most of the time, but maybe not during the full 8 hours.
But in those two situations where the meeting and the guy is sitting staring, what are some other things that are the same? Yes, they're sitting.
There's usually some computers, maybe not everybody, laptops into the meetings. Some
Yeah,
of the meetings
and they
are-
were all staring at something. They were either staring at, like, isn't that what you're doing right now? Staring at a screen? Yeah, right. Okay, so they're sitting, they're staring at a screen. What else?
It's not apparent that they're doing a lot of talking.
Probably not a lot of communication. And where are they?
Indoors.
Inside? Always inside, aren't we? And did you notice anything that had a connection to the outside, like were there windows or beautiful views? Yeah, they were all inside. And I mean, this is a really nice room, but we are inside, are we not? Yeah.
There's no break in concentration.
Yes, no break, because we're going to sit there until we solve that problem or we make that decision. We are focused. We are intent on doing that thing, whatever it is, as though that's the best way. Well, here are some things I noticed. They're all sitting. They've been there for a while. Maybe we hope not 13 hours, but we're not going to leave until we make this decision. We are inside. Now, there are some countries where it's against the law to have people in a meeting or working on a software project without a view of the outside. Scandinavia. But in the US, the people who have access to a window or even a view, if they wanted to get out and walk around and try to find one, well, that's not something we often think about as being important. And there's corporate colors. Now, I noticed as I was walking in here that there's a lot of color, little interesting things going on in this company, in this building. But in most corporate settings, there's the gray, brown uniform. Every chair looks the same. All the furniture looks the same. And we've got the same sort of corporate, dull shades so that we don't irritate anybody, I guess. I'm not sure. And then, well, let's take another poll here. On average, not just last night, but on average, how much sleep do you get every night? On average, on average. So how many get 12 hours?
You mean in a week, right?
All right, 11? 10. 10 is what Einstein got. 9? Hire these two people. How about 8? All right, that's pretty good. 7? 7 is the global average. 7 is on its way down. The global average is decreasing. 6? That's your average? I know. See, there are people who need less sleep, and we all think that's us. That's kind of like the above average thing. You know, we all think we're above average, and how is that possible? 5? Oh 4. I hope we've hit everybody. 3. Well, it is Boston after all. Okay. 2. All right, maybe we don't even want to go any further than that. 10 is also what we got before there were alarm clocks. When people just, well, how did they wake up?
Sun.
Ah, it has to do with our connection with nature, doesn't it? So most people on average now are getting 7, but we saw a lot of hands less than that. And so when we come to work, we're usually a little sleepy. And what do? You have your beverage of choice. Yeah. So I was at a company a couple of months ago, and I saw, these monster drinks. Have you seen those? He had 4 of them lined up, and I said, oh my goodness. I said, have you been drinking those all week? And he said, all week? He said, that's just today. 24 ounces, probably the equivalent of 3.5 cups of coffee in every can. We used to believe that caffeine was okay, was harmless, and so there's not a lot of research around it, and so we use it indiscriminately. Even little children, when we know they can't properly metabolize it. I saw a young woman with a baby in a Mexican restaurant just recently, and she was feeding with a straw Coca-Cola to a baby in arms, just dropping in the Coca-Cola. So babies, we know, do not metabolize caffeine. It just stays around. And then she probably wonders, well, why isn't the baby sleeping? So here we are, we're tired, and in response, we're having too much caffeine. And for that, we get paid to solve problems and make decisions. Wow. How many of you are doing Agile? I didn't count earlier. You're all doing some Scrum, XP. So how did you decide to do that? Did you look at all of the scientific studies? I mean, randomized, double-blind, controlled studies that show Agile is better than what you were doing before. How many of you looked at those? You did? Who is this guy? Were you in the 4 hours of sleep or no? Hey, because there aren't any. We don't do double-blind, randomized. We don't do science here. We get excited about stories. It's as though we were still sitting around the campfire, passing around food. Isn't that what we're doing here? Passing around food and talking about, whoa, Agile. I mean, I'm right there. I'm an Agile evangelist. Is that the word we use? Evangelist. What does that sort of call to mind? What, evangelist? That's not what I was thinking. Yeah, religion. I have another talk. It was on the list. It's called, Is Agile a Placebo? Now, wait a minute. How does a placebo work? Well, no, we see. Some people think that it's not real. But a placebo is real. The placebo effect can be measured. It is definitely real. But what's it sit on? What's the foundation for the placebo? Is belief. I believe in it. Therefore, it will help me with whatever my problem is. Well, if you have no scientific proof, is it a placebo? So if we're not going to do any science here, we'd better at least look to some of the scientific disciplines that could help us be better. And I know you don't have time to even read just the ordinary stuff that, I mean, how many of you still read real books? You know, one of those things you get from a library and you open it up, it's got pages, real books. Good for you. Okay, good for you. So we should be talking to those sciences who at least have evidence, some evidence for something that might help us since we don't do it ourselves. Nobody's run, and in fact, we have distorted the word experiment. We use that all the time, don't we? How many of you today, just today, said, well, let's do an experiment? Did you say that? Okay, and did you mean by that, what is our hypothesis? And let's do a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled experiment. And we are going to do statistical analysis of measurable results. Is that what you meant? I don't think so. So we have distorted that word, and what it means now in the Agile community is really try. We're going to try it. That's what experiment means to us. And there is no control group. And the way we assign people to it is by saying, who wants to do it? Yeah, I do. And that sounds like placebo to me. So what I'm trying to do for you tonight is to say there are sciences that reach into the kind of thing we face every day where there is evidence that can help us do a better job of solving problems and making decisions. And I'm going to give you a lot of those, and I hope that by the end of the evening, you will walk out of here with at least 2 things that you can say, I'm going to go try that. I know you're not going to do real science, but you might try it. So everything is evidence-based, and if you not only want the presentation, but if you'd like to have the paper or the source, because I'm not going to cite everything, ask me for that, and I'll be happy to send it to you. Okay, so let's look at that. Here's the first one. So remember those pictures in the beginning? Here's the guy staring at the screen. Here's the people who are sitting and staring. That's what we do all day long. And that's what you're doing right now. We need to make it okay for people to stand up and move. There are lots of ways of doing that. Lots of companies now are investing in stand-up desks. Anybody here doing that right now? Yeah, okay. What do you have, treadmills or?
Only in the gym. But,
Oh, okay.
Standing desks, and adjustable so you can go.
Yes.
Between sitting and standing.
Okay, do you have a testimony? How's that working for you?
Pretty well.
Okay.
There are a lot of people who like it standing.
Yep.
Other people prefer it sitting, and some people go back and forth.
Yes. So you should never force people to stand or to move around. You should make it as an option, and a standing desk is a good way to do that. Say, all right, if it's adjustable, then you can spend part of your time standing. Some people are not comfortable standing. Some people can't stand. One of the organizations I work with got so excited about Scrum, and that you're all doing Scrum, didn't you wave your hands? And in Scrum, there's this thing called the daily stand-up. And they loved it. They said, wow, this is so cool. Why don't we make all of our meetings stand up? I said, well, I don't know. You could try it. Isn't that what we say? We could try it. So they did. And what they found, because they measured, the meetings got shorter. Is that a surprise? The meetings got shorter. They didn't find that they were any more, well, productive in the sense of producing any more in that shorter period of time. But if you produce the same amount in a shorter amount of time, isn't that how we measure productivity? So by 1/3, on average, the meetings got shorter. So there's something you might experiment with. Make sure that everybody is okay with that. And what my recommendation is that you don't have the meeting be stand-up, but that you say it's okay if people at the meeting want to stand up. Because the research is clear, you do a better job of thinking about, solving, making decisions, coming up with new ideas when you are moving. We are hardwired to walk. Our Stone Age ancestors walked 12 to 15 miles a day. And what we have done is coerce these walking bodies into sitting in the same position all day long. Now, I was convinced early on by this evidence, but what really influenced me was a talk that was given at the Agile conference, the big Agile conference one year, by a guy who brought out a piece of research that I had just read. And it said, if you sit more than 6 hours a day, would that be any of you in here? More than 6 hours a day, even if you exercise in addition to that 6 hours. Okay? Even if you exercise, if you sit more than 6 hours a day, the longer you sit, the sooner you will die. It defines your mortality. So that's what turned this particular individual around, and his talk was called How to Pair Program on a Treadmill. So they had gotten treadmill desks. All right, I got one person standing. Thank you. And it's our 12-hour guy. Yay! All right, here's another one. Thank you. So he gave this talk about pair programming on a treadmill, and he gave it on a treadmill. Yes. So when you're walking on the treadmill desk, you're not running, you're walking about 1.1 miles per hour. You hardly notice it. And what his informal survey said was people not only feel better, they have more energy, their back pains started getting better. They noticed they didn't need as much caffeine over the course of the day. They felt more energetic. These are all very subjective measures. I know, you can look at the price of those things. They're very expensive. But other companies have just brought in cardboard boxes. You're creative people. Think of a way to do it. Think of a way to stand up and move around. If nothing else, do this little exercise. We are hardwired to look at the horizon. And we spend most of our time looking down. If we're not staring at a computer, we're staring at a phone. Or we're staring at an iPad. So we're heads down. We don't do very good thinking or problem solving in that position. It's been measured. So you need to raise your head. Now, whether you set a little timer on your phone, set it to go off, I don't know, but at least raise your head and look where the horizon would be. And when you do that, blink. The other illness that now plagues a lot of IT developers is their eyes dry out because they stare without blinking at a screen of some sort. So blink. You have to force yourself to blink. So look at the horizon, blink, turn your head from side to side. You can do all of that in a minute or two, and it just means that you're going to take a little break from the constant staring, not moving, sitting that plagues everything that we do today. Stand up, stretch. If you're really, really brave, lie down. Your brain loves metaphor. And when you lie down, your brain says, wow, the world looks different down here. And you will see things differently. So even just a little bit of exercise, it doesn't have to be hours and hours. Just take a few minutes. Have you ever had this experience? You were working on something, and you said, I just can't think about this anymore. I'm going to go get myself a cup of coffee because I'm falling asleep. And you start out for the coffee machine, and all of a sudden, bingo, there it is. Have you ever had that? Yeah. So instead of sitting, staring, get up and move around. What that does is open a little door to your unconscious that said, finally, you're moving. Finally, I have a chance to tell you. The answer is 37. Thank you, God.
42.
Or 42, sorry, 42. So get up and move around. Find ways to make that happen. And it doesn't have to cost anything, and you don't have to go out and buy a treadmill desk if you don't want to. So there's a picture of one. This one has a treadmill that it's retractable, so you can sit on it, so it doesn't extend up. This is a very expensive version. So when she wants to stand, she can stand. When she wants to sit, she can sit. You should offer the option, so that encourages people to move around. We also know that that helps you learn. This was an interesting experiment where they took art students and they said, here's this wonderful picture we want you to do, and then they did a randomized, double-blind, controlled experiment where one group of students was told, sit and stare, study this painting, and the other group was told, walk around, back and forth, take different angles, look at the painting. And what they showed was those who had walked around got more out of the painting, remembered more about it, had better ideas about the painting, were more creative than those who just sat and didn't move. So this is just one example of a lot of studies that have been done to show you're better at thinking, learning, coming up with new ideas if you move around than if you just sit and stare. Now, I see a question back there, but do you have a microphone?
Should we be walking in front of our screens?
Okay, I can't. What? Should you be walking in front of your screens? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just take a minute, or I know whether you're going to, my husband used to do this. He would set his phone on a timer, and every hour he would stand up and stretch and move around a little bit. Yeah, you don't have to go anywhere. You can stand in front of your screen. Somebody on a treadmill is moving in front of their screen. In fact, if you don't move, then it's really hard to stand because all of a sudden the blood pools in your ankles, and that's not so good either. And you are a creative person. You'll come up with all kinds. You'll be standing on one foot, or doing jumping jacks, or yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. So this is a company that has walking meetings. So in the company, people have treadmill desks, and they're on rollers. So when they're ready to have a meeting, those people just roll their treadmill desks into a configuration where they together can now work on a problem at a walking meeting. Steve Jobs was famous for coming into somebody's cubicle and saying, hey, I've got this great idea. Come take a walk with me. Now, he was a smart guy, but he also knew that walking is a powerful way to influence. Because in English, we say, if I want to influence somebody, I want to move them. And that's exactly what I've done. I've got him moving. Normally, we go in and we sit across from somebody, which is the worst way to negotiate, facing each other, and we don't move. So that means our positions remain fixed. Remember, your brain loves metaphor. The other advantage walking has is when you are walking together. I recommend this. How many of you are married? And this is a good way to talk about any issue, is walk together. Walk together, because now you share the same point of view. This way, you see the opposite point of view. So Steve Jobs and many others have used that technique to say, I want to convince this guy to do something. The best way is to get him moving so we share the same point of view. Take a break of any kind. Most people continue on for 12 hours or 13 hours or 16 hours feeling that if they let it go, then somehow that's going to break their concentration. Or we have fallen into the myth of flow, which I think was never intended to continue on for 16 hours. You cannot be in flow for 16 hours. What you're doing is forcing yourself to have focus on something, and you're not allowing all those wonderful creative and innovative approaches to happen. So you got to get up and move. Take a break. How many, well, maybe I shouldn't ask how many are smokers, but smokers have got it right. You would never see a smoker sit for 16 hours. It wouldn't happen, because they're going to get up every hour or 2 hours or 3 hours. I mean, I don't know. It depends on how bad but they're going to get up and they're going to move around.
You have to go outside.
And they have to go outside, even better. So they get to go outside and they get to hang out with other people. They get to exchange ideas. The smokers have got it right. If they just didn't have to smoke to do it. So learn. So learn from the smokers. In fact, I did have a friend who quit smoking, and he had trouble because all of a sudden he thought, well, I shouldn't get up and take all those breaks. So he's forcing himself to stay in one place, and it was hard for him to do that. I said, no, you still want to take the breaks, just don't go out and light up. That's what you want to avoid. So get up and move around, walk. And in fact, if you can walk sideways or backwards, it's even better. Because if you just walk, your brain says, oh, well, I know what this is. I don't have to pay attention to anything. But sideways, your brain is, wait a minute, what is going on here? I don't know what this is. And that's a good thing.
Paraphrase that as dance.
You could paraphrase that as dance, absolutely. You can dance or stand on one foot or jump around or whatever. And then, we don't have time to talk about it, but I ask you, and most of you are not getting enough sleep. Does your company have a nap room? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. In the U.S., nap rooms are called parking lots. So when that guy over there says, I got to go do an errand, I'll be back in about 25 minutes, and then he goes out to the parking lot, and he curls up in the back seat, and he takes a little nap. You didn't think I noticed that, did you? Yeah. So many companies now have nap rooms. And that means, oh, all right, I wasn't able to get my 7 hours of sleep last night, but at least I could go in and I could get 20 minutes, a little nap in the middle of the day. That would be definitely a good thing. Yeah, take a nap. Or work on something different. Plan to. We don't want you to be interrupted. That's different. But on your own, you decide, I'm going to leave this particular task and I'm going to work on another one. I'm going to decide to do that. And when you do that kind of interruption, you'll find that lots of things about the original task will now occur to you that wouldn't have if you sit there and force it, trying to get that problem solved or reach that goal. It's also good to work just on some little easy things. Save some of those up. Say, all right, that's going to be my break today. I know I have to get that little easy thing done, so I'll just go over here, and it will do the same thing. It will cause that interruption for you. That's so important. So this is Ariana Huffington of the Huffington Group. She says, there are many great ideas locked inside of us. We just need to close our eyes to see them. And there are 3 nap rooms in the Huffington Post media group. 3 nap rooms. This is really hard because nobody now does nothing. As soon as there's a spare moment, what do? You whip out that phone or that iPad and you have to do something. You can't do nothing anymore. You've got to text all your many friends or you've got to, I don't even know, what are they doing? What are all those people doing when they refuse to do nothing? What are they doing?
Italians got it very right. Il dolce far niente. The sweetness of doing nothing.
Absolutely. So he had a quote that was wonderful in Italian. I should write that down. But absolutely. And what we know is that the part of your brain that's involved when you're doing nothing, your default network, is the part that comes up with innovation. So if you never use that, if you never allow the part of your brain that comes up with innovative ideas to have any play, then where's all the creativity going to come from? From the video games or the texting or whatever else we're doing these days? Allow that back in your life. We used to call it daydreaming. Let your mind go and come up with all those wonderful ideas that I know you have. Is that a question?
We tend to multitask nowadays. It uses our brain a lot more often. Like you said, do nothing, and it puts more burden on our multitasking. We're doing 3 or 4 things all at the same time during the day.
Okay, so first of all, I'm not sure, this is the short version of this talk. This is from a class that I give all day.
Sure.
But one of the things that I do address is that we don't multitask. We cannot. Our conscious mind cannot multitask. You can only do one thing at a time. And when you think you're multitasking, you're paying a heavy penalty in context switch, just like linear processors. You have to unload one thing and load the next. And in the meantime, there's loss, a measurable loss. So if you're texting while you're driving or trying to do multiple other things, it's an illusion that we have that we can seamlessly switch when really there's enormous overhead. And if we are concerned about flow, then we also break our concentration by going back and forth. And what studies of, I'm mostly a fan of very young people because I see in them a lot of things that I think are going to be good for us. But one of the things that's not there anymore is focus. That there's this, I must always move around and I must always do something else. And the studies back me up on that there is almost an inability to stay focused. So we do need that. We do need that. So thank you for your question. This comment from Facebook's product chief, my commute is my most productive creative time. That to me doesn't seem like doing nothing, but for most people, that's about the only time when they do nothing is in their commute. And at least he's saying he's not texting, so I think that's all right. So I don't worry too much in the United States about people eating. We are no longer the fattest nation on the face of the earth. Watch it. Watch it. Mexico has taken over. Come on, people. Come on, I'm telling you, we're falling behind here. The rest of the world is rapidly catching up. All you have to do is go through Western Europe to see people are getting heavier and heavier over time. So we have plenty to eat. But what we don't realize is that there are good and bad times and things to eat. And so one of the things I stumble across in organizations is people don't eat breakfast. So they say, well, I wasn't hungry, or I didn't have time. And so they have slept all night, at least for the 3 or 4 hours when they were able to sleep. And now they come in and they go to work and they think they can immediately begin to solve complicated problems or make important decisions when we know that the brain uses 25% of the energy you consume. And if you haven't given your brain anything for an extended period of time, it doesn't work well. You wouldn't run a marathon without eating. So don't demand that your brain also produce, solve problems, come up with innovative ideas if you haven't given it anything either to eat or the thinking tool I recommend now is water. There was a famous Israeli study that showed judges, when they first begin to review cases, looking at appeals for early parole, granted more of them immediately in the morning, and then the number tapered off as they got closer and closer to lunch. And then after lunch, the numbers went back up again until the end of the day. Well, what we know about your brain is when it's fatigued, when you're tired and your brain is tired, you operate on what's called default mode. You take the easy way out. You don't want to struggle with difficult decisions or to make any sort of difficult evaluation. And that's what the judges had to do. Evaluate these cases. So the default there was to say, no, I'm not going to grant parole. When really it was a reflection of the fact that their brains did not have enough energy in order to process the decision. Your brain has limited abilities. It's just like your body. You can't run forever. You can't think forever. You need to feed it and you need to water it. So if you have water in front of you all the time, your brain will look at it, will say, there's water there, I should drink it. You don't have to think about drinking. It will happen automatically. So that is your best thinking tool, is water in front of you all the time. Any other liquid, except stay away from those monster drinks that, they're not good for you, but water especially. There have been some really interesting experiments showing that people who were given a very difficult, real, complicated task to solve did better if there was a real, not a fake, but a real plant in the room. And of course, the way these experiments are done, there's always a control group, or there's always some way of evaluating what would happen if that attribute or treatment weren't there. And so in this particular experiment, after solving the problem, they said, oh, well, did you notice there was a plant in the room? And what do you think they said? No, of course they didn't. But did they do a better job? Measurably, yes. Now that's very inexpensive to have a real plant in the room. Even better if you have a window where you can look out and see a real plant. We are hardwired to be around things that are green and blue. We do best when we have some reminder of what nature is all about. And we can have a real plant in our room. If you want, I can send you a list of plants that do well even in a corporate environment where people forget to water them. So they're good indoor plants. They survive. They're very hardy. So no excuse, and they're cheap. We also know that when you take your break and get up and walk around, if you can go outside, like the smokers do, and if you can see green grass, trees, that also helps your problem solving and your decision making. This is a tip from a friend of mine, and I actually read the evidence for it later. He said, whenever I'm stuck on a problem, well, I know when I learned this, it was when I was working on my PhD thesis, and I would get stuck on something, and I would say to my wonderful husband over there, I said, hey, would you like to go for a walk? I'm really stuck. I am working on this problem, and I don't know what to do. And he'd say, sure, let's go for a walk. And I said, well, now here's what it is. I'm trying to do blah, blah, blah. And he would say, uh-huh. Oh, uh-huh. Oh, uh-huh. And then pretty soon, I would say, I got it. Oh, thank you. Thank you for helping me. Well, did he help me? Yes. He did. He did. He gave me the feeling that somebody was listening to me, and so that I could explain what it was. And in that explanation, somehow because when you're thinking, the other thing we didn't say there is that most of the time, there might be somebody in the meeting who's talking, but everybody else is quiet. And if you talk out loud, and you can get away with that now because most people think you're on your cell phone. So you can just walk around and you say, I'm really stuck on this problem. I've been trying to do this, and they'll think you're calling for support. So you can do that now without appearing to be crazy, which didn't used to be the case, I know, right?
I was at Berkeley, so you could do that.
At Berkeley.
Out there, but
So he finished his PhD at Berkeley and seeing they didn't care then. So people would walk around and they were just talking to the air and people thought, oh, well, you know, it's Berkeley. So explaining the problem out loud uses a different part of your brain. And when you think you have to explain it, then, in fact, this is the benefit to pair programming. When your pair says, why are we doing this? And then you have to say, well, let's see, because we have, oh, why are we doing that? That having to explain opens up an area around the difficulty that you really hadn't thought through, and that just by silently staring at, you weren't going to discover. So explaining it out loud, and if it's not another person, it can be, I saw one company where everybody has pillows, and they're shaped like animals. And I said, oh my goodness, look at all those animals. And they said, it's great because you can talk to them, and then you can also use them to take a nap. So dual purpose animals. Think about it. You could experiment. I mean, yep. We know that most of the time when you're sitting focused on that problem, you are hands on a keyboard. And what we know, and there is evidence, you do not do a good job on a keyboard. You don't do a good job of either capturing information, working with information, coming up with new ideas. You need to get a real object, real piece of paper, and especially if you can draw it, sketch it. This is a struggle for me because I feel like I have no talent for that kind of thing. But the evidence is clear that writing by hand is something we've been doing since we carved rocks in the Stone Age. And it's how we do our best thinking, is by drawing a little sketch of it on a real piece of paper, not on your iPad, not on your keyboard. That even people in meetings who do doodling, I love this experiment. People who just intentionally did little figure eights, they weren't taking notes, remembered more from the meeting than those people who were typing notes on their computer. That's also true for taking pictures. People who take pictures when they travel remember less. Ah, well. And we know happy people do a better job. So you can practice your language. Use positive words. Use happy words. What we like to say in Agile is yes and, not yes but. Have you played that game? Okay, it makes a huge difference. It makes a difference in how you think about what's on the table, how the other person thinks about what's on the table, and what everybody else hears. If you're inclusive and if you're positive, we used to think that it worked like this. It was, I'm happy, and so therefore I smile. So the smile is kind of a reflection of what I feel. And now what the researchers are telling us is this is a feedback loop. It works both ways. Yes, it works, I'm happy, I smile, but it also works, if I smile, I become happy. If I say positive things, I become positive. If I behave in an open way, I become more open to new ideas. So it's a feedback loop, and it works both ways. Was another question over here?
A little bit of a delayed reaction to the last slide.
Okay.
Does it matter for typing whether somebody is a touch typist where they can do it rather effortlessly versus hunted neck?
Matters not.
Okay.
Matters not.
The other,
In fact, the people who are better do worse. Because the people who are really, really good typists try since they are so good, to capture more information. And in that capturing, they forget that really the intent here is to learn. not to type. It's not about taking notes. It's about learning something from the situation. So the better, do worse.
And that goes to the other question. For the writing, did anybody look at whether or not like writing less mattered? And for me, that goes back. I had a period in high school where I injured my wrist and was unable to write very quickly or very much. And I actually did better at retaining in subjects that weren't my forte
That's interesting.
by being able to take very few notes than I did by.
Yeah, because you had to really think about it. And there are studies that show that if you're concentrating on learning something and that your notes don't have to be an exact copy of what transpired, then what you're focused on is, I want to get the essence. I want to get what this is really all about, not just capture what was said. So I think that's exactly what you were trying to do. Thank you. Yeah? Oh, can we throw her the... You could stand up and move.
So it might
Sorry.
be too early to tell, but, and maybe it's going to be an evolutionary thing, but I was just thinking if we had a large group of people that are multitasking, and while the studies might show us currently aren't being effective, if the folks behind us that are continually multi-generationally practicing multitasking, that something switches in our mind and does it, or something else, you know, you could take, there's a lot of new behaviors coming around.
Are you a plant?
No, I'm not.
Because, no, you're right, and that unfortunately, there are studies that show there are some very young people who can multitask. But they can only keep track of two things. But they can sing two songs at the same time, you know, versions of that. But it's a very small percentage of the population. And what we'll have to wait and see to answer your question is, will their children have that ability? But yeah, you're right. And we are still evolving.
Or the grandchildren, you know, it might be.
Yep. But the numbers are so small, not statistically significant, so small that the researchers are desperately testing, trying to find more of them. I think they've come up with maybe 3 or 4 of these individuals, but they do have it. And they can't hold more than 2 things. Whereas I think if you talk to most young people, they have got 6 or 8 things going all at the same time. No, they can't do that. But yeah, you're right. We're not done yet. Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Yes?
In observation, I see people get better at context switching.
Sure.
It's still not multitasking.
That's right. Yeah.
They just get better at putting something down, picking something else up, and switching.
Right.
It's still not more productive.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a skill.
You get better at it.
Like any other skill, and you can improve with practice, but the penalty is so obvious and it's so measurable that doing that is not productive, even if you're very good at it. Unless you're doing it intentionally with the idea of this is going to be my break. I'm tired of working on that one, I'm going to work over here now, and now that kind of thing, intentional switching can be good. So, yeah, but you're right. You're right. I'm trying to look at the time. Okay, I'm not going to talk about this. This is too complicated. And this is more interesting. So I was in, what was I don't know, some Western European country. And they said, oh, Linda, we got to show you. We just redecorated everything. And we got pillows, and we got funny animals, and we painted all the walls, so we got rid of all the gray and the black. And we came around a corner, and I looked at this room, and the walls were red. Now, there's a lot of research around color. And the research is pretty clear. Red would be the last color you would want on your walls. So why aren't we paying attention? Why aren't we just say, oh, red, that sounds cool? We should look at the research. The research shows that you put people in a red room and they shut down. They not only don't come out with great ideas, you can measurably show their ideas kind of decrease. They just go into a hole. Red for us means anger, stop, frustration, blood. It's not a good color for us. So red Definitely bad. And hang on. So here's an experiment that was done with art because we've got art on the walls. Yes, that's very good. The other thing this company had was they had pictures of Einstein and Mother Teresa and all the notables, Marie Curie. I was just in Poland. Marie Curie. And the research, again, is very clear. Those are not the people you want hanging on your walls. Why do you suppose we don't do well with Einstein hanging on the wall? Now that I've told you that, of course, but yeah.
Is it looking at art that spurs innovation or
Oh.
doing art that spurs innovation?
It's neither. It's actually neither. But look, can we stick with Einstein for a minute? Why would that not be a good idea? Yeah, it makes you feel like, oh, I'm not that good. Yeah, that's right. So don't put Einstein on the wall. So this experiment with art says it almost doesn't matter. You're going to put art on the wall. It can be a good thing. But it's whether it's weird or not, whether it's unusual or not. So here's an example. We would do this randomized, controlled experiment. We put people in a room that had these nice balls all lined up, and then we put the other people over here. Well, that's kind of nice, I guess, but whoa, wait a minute. What is that? Would you suppose there'd be a difference in the two groups? Because, you know, they ask them at the end, they say, did you notice those balls hanging on the wall? And they all say, no. Wall? What wall? I didn't see any balls hanging on the wall. So, of course, they didn't notice, but it does make a statistically significant difference. Which one is better? This one. And what's the message here? Why, that's unusual. That's kind of strange, isn't it? That's not what I expected, is it? I sure wouldn't have put a red square in the corner. Breaking the rhythm. Okay, I'm at 8:10, and I don't want to run over. What do you think? Are you okay? Yes.
Just one quick question.
Yes.
Does the color sensitivity depend upon the culture, or is that universal?
If you went around the world and you said, what's your favorite color? Or testing people, where do they do best? It's blue. And right after that is green. And it's the nature green, not the fluorescent green. So those two colors are where if you think about it, we all evolved from that corner of the savannah, and then we hiked millions of miles, and we have a common set of ancestors that love to be outside, blue and green. That's it for us.
Do all cultures have the same view of red?
Pretty much. That it's a bad color. Except China. Yeah. But again, you know, what you ask people, that's different. You see the difference? Because you can say to people, well, what color would you like to have? And they might pick orange. I see we're from Tennessee. See, he's got his orange shirt. We would say orange. But that's different from putting them in a controlled experiment where you say, all right, we're going to give you a really difficult problem to solve. And some of these places are going to have red and blue, and some are going to have green and orange. And then let's see what happens. That's different. But there are some cultures where red is revered. But that doesn't mean that if you put those people in a red room that they're going to do well. Okay. So I feel like I don't want to keep you here all night. But this is important because we still do this, brainstorming. And the research on brainstorming is very, very weak. And we still subscribe to it because we think you get people in a room and don't you build on that? The energy, people come up with ideas, and the answer is no. So what you want to do quickly is this. If you have an idea and you want to elicit ideas, is have them do that before the meeting, on their own, quietly. We know that most people in our work environments are introverts. There's a wonderful book by Susan Cain called Quiet. Have you read that? Trying to point out a lot of the way our organizations are set up is not conducive to getting the best from people who are introverts, and they don't do well in a brainstorming situation. So give them the idea ahead of time and to say, we're going to talk about this, so come prepared. Think about, what would you say? And then have the meeting, and then take a break. Wait until the next day, sleep on it. Take 10 minutes before you reach a final decision or do something momentous. So give it out ahead of time, have the brainstorming meeting, take a break, and then make the decision. And again, I can send you more of the research on that. I don't know why we don't pay attention. I love this one. We got a lot of women in the room. Look at that. Yes. Evidence, lots of evidence. Teams with women always do better. Let's hear it. Yes. Yay! Woo! However, the research also shows that if the team is all women, so it's really not the women, it's the diversity. You need diverse opinions. So you not only need women, you need people from different cultures, you need people who have had different educational backgrounds, people who have had different experiences, who see the world differently. That's when you get the best results. This is a classic paper from Harvard Business Review about these diversity studies, and that's the message. It's not the women. I mean, we do need more women in technical fields, but it's about the diversity. So that's always good. And I'm going to skip that. Oh, I love this. We should sing. So my husband and I live in a retirement community, and we are working on the military medley for September 11th. And when you play those songs from the Army and the military, you think, wow, you know, you want to get up and you start, and that's the idea. We're all in this together. So I thought, we should have more songs. Do we have any musicians in here? Let's have some songs, you guys. Come on. Write the Scrum song. S is for the... No. Okay. And then my favorite, because I love animals, lots of research. Only around dogs. I don't have anything on cats or birds, but if a dog is in the room, well, unless you're allergic, of course, or if you're terrified of dogs, then you do better. So dogs have been with us for a long, long time, and in many cases, they have meant our survival. So dogs, for us as a species, are a plus. And when a dog is in the room, we come up with better ideas. So, and babies. So my favorite example, all time, I know there are lots of great Agile companies out there, but is Menlo Innovations. And I was privileged to be able to go there finally last June. Here's the guy on the left here is Rich Sheridan. He's the president and CEO. And what is he doing? He's holding a baby. It's not his baby. It's one of his programmers who had a baby and said, you know, Rich, I'm having trouble finding a babysitter because, you know, she's a newborn. And he said, bring her in. And the mother said, well, wait a minute, Rich, what happens when the baby gets upset, you know, and needs attention? Who's going to take care of the baby? And what do you suppose the answer turned out to be? Everybody. In fact, if anything happens, everybody says, it's my turn. I want to hold the baby. I get to feed the baby. I didn't know how that works for changing the diapers. Maybe not. And then these are older kids. There was a young gentleman there. He was 9 or 10, I think, and he was playing video games. So they have babies at Menlo. Go to menloinnovations.com, because not only are they agile, but they are transparent. So there are white papers there about how they hire people, how they get new business opportunities, how they do everything. So they will tell you, they will share their secrets, and if you ever want to go for a wonderful visit in Ann Arbor, Michigan, they'll take you around and they will say, here's how we do anything, retrospectives, planning, estimation. It's a wonderful, wonderful company, Menlo Innovations. So here's a little summary. I hope that you've got 2 things. Remember, that was my goal. We talked about moving, taking a break, you're not getting enough sleep, naps will work. Watch your caffeine, make sure you have water in front of you, have some connection with nature over the course of the day. If you can get outside, even better. Look to see what you can do to improve your environment, whether you can bring in real plants, put interesting art on the walls, bring in babies, dogs, whatever. And the main thing is you want to keep experimenting. I wrote a book about change, and it's about this kind of thing, is keep learning, take little steps. You don't have to make drastic changes to get the benefits of all this research. And I hope that you'll send me some email, and I'll send you the PowerPoint, and then you can go out and give it, and we'll all try to make things just a little bit better. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. So are we done? Do we have time for questions? I don't know. Who's in charge here?
Questions, go ahead.
Okay.
Question is, you're talking about individuals coming up with ideas better than in groups, because there are a lot of introverts and the like.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't mean to say that. I just meant they need time on their own before the meeting.
So what's interesting is, at least what I've experienced in Agile and read about Agile, it's really team-oriented.
Yes.
From the daily stand-up to pair programming or even mob programming.
Yep.
And I haven't seen much in Agile about the single person off on their own. It's surprisingly team-oriented.
Yep.
And so my question is, how can one then fit what you're talking about within something as group-oriented as Agile?
Because what you do with this is you give out the idea before the meeting to the individuals who are invited to the meeting, who need to contribute, to say, take some time on your own to think about this, and give them at least overnight. So that introverts who are a little slower at thinking in front of other people and saying things before they really fully thought them out, have a chance to process and come up with their own ideas, and then come into the meeting, and then build on all the normal brainstorming stuff, but don't make your decision until you've had, again, a time for a break. So it's just that introverts approach new ideas with, they want to have it all fully thought out before they say anything, and sometimes in a meeting there just isn't time for that processing that they need to do. So it's true that Agile is team-oriented, but we also need to think about what's best for individuals. And in fact, my best example of that is the open work environment. The studies around that are pretty clear. That is not good for anybody. And yet we advocate that. And everybody's moving to that. And I say, well, just look at the evidence. There's lots of evidence there. Nobody works well in a situation like that. So, no, maybe you can get past, nobody listens to me. I'm too old. But certainly, that's what we're talking about. Software is developed by people, individual people. We need to do what's best for them. Yep. Thank you.
What you said it early on about moving around, standing up, all made a lot of sense. I was thinking about our elementary school educational system in this country, where kids are very regimented.
Yes.
If they stand up, they'll probably be yelled at by the teacher or sent for detention or something. How do you have any comments about how to integrate some of your, what sound to me, sensible ideas with the educational system that we have?
I think it's changing. So we have 2 elementary schools across the street from us, and we go over there and volunteer. And the last time I was over there, all the kids were on those big exercise balls. So I said to the teacher, wow, that's kind of strange, that they're, and she said, well, they need to move. So they could kind of bounce up and down, and they could roll back and forth, and then nobody sat in a chair. They were all on exercise balls. And then every now and then they'd get up and change balls around. I want the smaller one or the bigger one or the blue one. But they were doing this all day long. And I thought, okay, whatever works. I mean, at least she was trying to keep them moving. But you're right, it starts in school. that we take young scientists who learn to walk by experimenting, and we tell them, no, this is about you listen to me, and I will tell you the answer, and then you give it back to me on a test. And all of a sudden, all that experimenting and science is gone. And it's all about getting the right answer. And our schools still do that.
It's easy to understand because teachers really don't have enough time to give individual attention to each student. They really want to be able to work with a core that's all in sync. And yet it's taking the creativity and individuality and inventiveness out of each kid and kind of forcing them into this common mold where you lose all that.
Schools came out of the industrial age. The idea was to prepare people to work on an assembly line. So sit in a row, pay attention to me, I will tell you what to do, and now you all do it. And now you can step into a job where that's exactly what the rest of your life is going to be like. Well, maybe at that time it might have been the best thing to do, I don't know. But Agile has said there's a different way, so why don't we think about that in our schools? And there are a lot of people who are trying to bring Agile into school. And I think the big ship is turning. But, of course, it's slow. It's the way maybe it should be. I don't know. Thank you. Other questions? Yes?
I'm just reflecting on your 4 steps, and one of the things I have noticed in my own career, especially about doing small successes.
Yes.
When you have a successful change, it matters a lot how that success is presented and who presents that success. So many times that success could be looked at in a different way. Somebody might say, as a group, when you present to that, saying, success is only small, so it is not really the way we want it. On the other hand, right way presented. So many times it matters how it is presented and who presents it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first thing you want to do is tell the stories of your success, because you don't have any science to report. Tell the stories to everybody that you know. And that's the biggest way that change happens in an organization is, well, hey, we heard Linda talk about these standing desks, and well, we couldn't afford to buy that, but we got some cardboard boxes, and our team has been taking turns. We put our laptops on the cardboard boxes, and that really seems to work pretty well for us. Maybe you could try that. And then another team tries it, and another team tries it, and maybe some manager notices that and says, maybe we could see if we have budget for getting some kind of real stand-up desks if you guys think this is working. And that's so much better than saying, we're all going to go to stand-up desks and everybody's going to do it this way. So it's those little small stories that we talk about to each other when you're taking those breaks, when you're out smoking on the patio. And those stories are how you convince other people. Just little things. So I ask you a question. Have you ever been to a meeting where somebody said, now this is a secret. Don't tell anybody. When we leave this room, we are not going to tell anybody what we decided here. Nobody. Yep, we got that. So the question is, how long does it take after the end of the meeting before everybody in the organization knows what happened at that meeting? How long does it take?
First smoker reveals it to everybody.
Yeah, not too long, right? And how did that happen? Did it happen because somebody said, here's what happened, and I want to tell all you people? No. Somebody told somebody, who told somebody else, who told somebody else, who told somebody else. And that's really how information spreads and how that's knowledge. Nobody looked it up in a knowledge database. They heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody else who told it to somebody. And hey, do you know that team down there? They're standing up. I don't know what they're doing. They got cardboard boxes, and now they're standing, got their laptops on those. What's going on with that? Everybody will know about that. And especially if it's working well, yeah, all know about it. You look at like you don't believe me.
Yeah, I've seen that many times. It is not just story. Who tells the story also matters.
Sure. Well, and that's why you tell it to the people you know with whom you have credibility, and they tell it to the people they know who have credibility. You don't necessarily, you can't, as an individual, tell everybody. There are some people in your organization who don't like you. And that's true for everybody. So you tell it to those people who are going to be open and receptive, and you say, hey, we've been trying this new thing. It's really cool. You might think about it, or indeed. We're good. Thank you all. Remember, send me some emails.